Hello everybody and welcome back to Red Eagle Politics. Make sure you guys like this video down below and subscribe to the channel if you are new. So we have more polls that dropped today. Donald Trump, he is right there. He is neck and neck with Kamala Harris. The New York Times released a post-debate poll. People said Kamala Harris is going to shoot up in the polls after the debate. Well, aside from some, low quality pollsters, I guess you could say, polls like Ipsos, polls like Morning Compost, we have not seen that rapid shift to the left. And even in the New York Times, which again, their polls nationally in 2020 were to the left of the country. They were even worse in a lot of these swing states, and we're going to get to that in a minute. But they're showing Donald Trump and Kamala Harris, they're tied. They're neck and neck nationally. They're neck and neck in the popular vote. And if that's true, it's going to be very difficult for Democrats to win. They're basically DOA if they can't get a lead in the popular vote of around, 2.5 percentage points. That even puts them, not even to 50-50. They need to make sure they win that popular vote by around 3 points in order to win the Electoral College. And even though you have this first debate, the media is hyping Harris up as the debate winner, you're not seeing her run away with the national polls. And that's when response bias should be favoring her, just like it favored Romney in 2012, just like it favored Hillary in 2016 and Biden in 2020. After their first debate performances, they started to skyrocket. Kamala Harris, we've had enough time to pass. She should be at her peak right now. What's exactly going to happen that's going to change the trajectory of this race, in her favor? It doesn't really seem like there's anything that can. This basically just becomes a turnout battle, as I expected it would be. Donald Trump's got his base. Kamala Harris has her base. They're neck and neck. The polls are a little schizophrenic. They jump around in terms of their polling shifts based off of what's going on. But in reality, we know that public opinion does not shift on a whim. Yeah, some Republicans might have not liked Donald Trump's debate performance. I did, for the record. But that doesn't necessarily mean that they're not going to vote for Donald Trump over Kamala Harris, because this election is basically a binary choice and everybody knows it. And that's not something that's all that great for Kamala Harris. So we're going to go over some of the data in some of the swing states that we've seen, and we're going to kind of break it down a little bit. Does it look good for Trump? Does it look bad for Trump? Because it should, according to the mainstream media. They say Kamala Harris, she's running away with this thing. Is she really? Is she even winning it at all? We're going to analyze it, but I have to tell you guys about shop.redeaglepolitics.com, because the 2024 election is right around the corner, and the 2024 election merch drop on shop.redeaglepolitics.com is here. We got t-shirts, we got tank tops, we got coffee mugs, all this and more. My favorite is the Trump iconic black mug. You got Trump with the bullet design with the American flag on the front. You got the inspirational quote on the back. Now, do keep in mind, for a limited time, we're doing a special. You buy one, you get 20% off on all t-shirts, tank tops, and coffee mugs. We got all these designs, and we got the old designs from a couple of years back as well on the site. Make sure you guys check it out at shop.redeaglepolitics.com. The link is in the description and the pinned comment down below. So we have national polls, and I've said this before, and I've said it again. This is typically when you would see a rise for Harris in the polls, because every single time in history, when the media declares a winner of a debate, it doesn't matter whether they won the debate or whether they don't win a debate. Even this year, earlier this year, between Trump and Biden. And I think that did change public opinion, but did it change it by as much as like 10 points, and what some of these polls were saying? Probably not, if we're going to be completely honest. And I even said it at the time, Donald Trump, is he really winning the popular vote by like 10? And no, but this is not good news for Biden regardless. And now you have the New York Times coming out. They say it's the number one ranked pollster according to the election mafia. And what do they show? They show that Donald Trump did not really lose any support since the debate. In fact, it went from Harris +1 to a tie, and they polled directly after the debate. If they polled this week again, they might get a Trump +1 again, just based on the response bias and it dipping. And again, this is the national vote. What matters are the swing states. You have Pennsylvania. Kamala Harris, currently in the state of Pennsylvania, leads by 1% in the polls, but you have polls in there like Quinnipiac, which were so wrong in 2020. If we could pull this up, you could look at 2020 in the polls. Quinnipiac, their final poll, Biden by 7. And if you want to look at the Quinnipiac poll, if they had a second to last poll or a poll in early October, Biden by 13. So they go from Biden by 13 to Harris by 5, and it's bad news for Donald Trump all of a sudden. You could do the same thing with the Suffolk poll. You want to look at the Suffolk poll, it'd be USA Today, Suffolk poll, the poll they released in October, Biden by 7. So they underestimated Donald Trump by roughly 5 points. And if they're doing that again, Donald Trump would win the state by 2. New York Times poll has Harris by 4, which is incompatible with their national poll, by the way. It's impossible you'd have Pennsylvania voting to the left of the country by 4 percentage points. It just malpractice. This is not like a midterm year where there's different turnout dynamics in every state. This is a presidential election. You're going to have a gradient across, all the demography. Yeah, there's going to be some exceptions for sure, like Florida. Florida's kind of a unique state. Vermont's kind of a unique state. But Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin, they're all similar. And the polling we see is so inconsistent, where you have polls drop like from Emerson that show Trump by 1, and then you have polls dropped from, Franklin and Marshall showing Harris by 3, or Quinnipiac showing Harris by 5. And some of those polls were more accurate than others in the past. But even Emerson underestimated Donald Trump in the 2020 election. When the Hill was, teamed up with Harris X instead, they had Biden by 5. Now they're combining to show Donald Trump by 1 in the state. Franklin and Marshall had Biden down by 6 points in the state. When you look at that, their poll last time around about this time of year showed Biden up by 6 percentage points. So we see this gross underestimation of Donald Trump time and time again in the state of Pennsylvania. Similar thing with North Carolina, by the way. People like to pretend that, the polls were accurate in North Carolina in 2020, but in reality, the only polls that were accurate in the state were polls like Trafalgar. These polls that they call, these are right-leaning polls, they don't count. But you look at the polls that are in the aggregate now, you see like Signal, they have Donald Trump leading. East Carolina has Donald Trump leading. There's so many polls that have him up. It's neck and neck, but we look at polls every election cycle at this point. In North Carolina, they show the same exact thing. In fact, Trump's in a good position. You look at Georgia. You see a poll out of the Atlanta Journal-Constitution. That's a left-leaning pollster, and they show Donald Trump leading by 3 percentage points. The Hill shows Donald Trump leading by 3 percentage points. Even Quinnipiac shows Donald Trump leading by 3 percentage points in Georgia. You look at Arizona. He's up in every poll in Arizona. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now, granted, there's a few right-leaning polls in the mix, but there's also CNN. They're a left-leaning poll as well in the mix. But Donald Trump leads overall in the state of Arizona. You look at Wisconsin, a state where the polls drastically underestimated Donald Trump. And you look at Emerson. Donald Trump leads in Emerson in Wisconsin. They had Biden up by 8 points last election cycle. So you're seeing a massive shift to the right in the polling. One would say, yeah, there's probably going to be some sort of carryover. I'm not saying you're going to see a polling error of 6, 7 points again, but even a polling error of 2 points, that's more than enough for Donald Trump to go out there and win the state of Wisconsin. And you talk about demographically speaking across all of these states, we see it. If Donald Trump can just improve, 2% with white, non-college educated voters, if he improves 2%, that would be huge, and it would be enough to get him the victory over Kamala Harris. Plain and simple, he wins. He wins Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, Arizona, and Georgia, and he holds North Carolina in that instance. And given certain trends, Nevada also would come into play. Michigan's going to be neck and neck. Obviously, just a little shift. A lot of these swing states are very similar. Because if Donald Trump just focuses on getting the turnout he needs among the working class demographic, mainly it's white working class, but in states like Arizona and Nevada, there's definitely more of an emphasis as well on like Hispanic working class voters that have, some cultural similarity to those white working class voters. We're talking like second generation, third generation, you name it. Donald Trump has made a play for those voters. He did pick up some of them in 2020. He'd like to pick up more this time around. He'd take Arizona, he'd take Nevada, but that's what it's going to come down to, holding his own among, college-educated white voters. And as for the minority voters, he probably will make some gains regardless. I don't know to what extent he's going to be making those gains. It's possible you could see turnout be down a little bit given some of the mail-in ballot requests we've seen among black voters in North Carolina and Georgia. If those reports are true, definitely helps Donald Trump pad his margins for sure. And of course, the swingometer is not going to take everything into account. Obviously, Florida, just given trends, it's going to be a lot more than Trump by 5. We'll see that happen. But regardless, what does it show us? It shows us that Donald Trump has a clear path to victory, and the polls are showing it. And the polls are showing it, especially when you compare it to past polling shifts. You go to Michigan this day in history in 2020. Donald Trump is polling over 5 points better in the state of Michigan now than he was polling then. And if you look at those same exact polls, you look at them, Emerson, what did Emerson show in Michigan? Biden by 7. They're now showing Harris by 2. Marist, did Marist even poll Michigan? I don't even believe they did, but Marist dropped polls out of Pennsylvania. Marist and the Washington Post, very left-leaning pollsters, but in Pennsylvania, they dropped some tied polls there, which kind of shows that the narrative from the mainstream media about this race, that Harris is running away with it and she's actually making inroads in the Rust Belt, not entirely accurate. Quinnipiac, Harris by 5, that's a joke, by the way. It's, again, these two are outliers. Insider advantage, Trump by 1. They had Biden by 2. That was the most accurate pollster then. Shows Trump winning it. Mitchell Research / MIRS, they had Biden up by 10. Now they show a tied race. CBS News, Harris by 1. Did CBS even poll? It doesn't seem like they dropped the final poll out of Michigan. Trafalgar shows a tied race. They're being a little cautious this cycle from what we can tell. But you look at this, even Epic, MRA, the Detroit News, the Detroit Free Press, if you look at how they were polling back then, it was like Biden by 7. Biden by 7, Biden by 7. You see what's going on here. You see a massive shift to the right in the polling. That's what we're seeing. So are the polls fixed like they claim every cycle, only for them not to be fixed? Or are the polls once again underestimating Donald Trump's support? Because it seems like the polls, they're incompatible. Even the national polls, which are more accurate, like the New York Times, what are they showing compared to what they're showing in Pennsylvania? When you look at this here, it's virtually impossible that you're dropping a tied poll nationally and that you're dropping a poll in the state of Pennsylvania that has Donald Trump down by 4 points. It shows that you're once again missing those white working class voters that make up Donald Trump's base in the polls, and maybe they don't turn out very well in midterm years, which is why the polls had the opposite problem in 2022. It's why they had the opposite problem in 2012. But right here, right now, which is what matters, it's a presidential year, the polls are neck and neck, and the polls usually underestimate Trump, and that would lead one to rationally believe that Trump is in a good position. But like I say, we got to get out and vote. You got to find people. I mean, this election, we have more than enough math on our side, but there's a lot of people out there who, for one reason or another, might not end up voting who would vote for Trump. So it's up to you, it's up to me, it's up to us to find those people. Maybe they're in your life, who knows, and make sure they get out and vote. Otherwise, we won't be able to win this election. Our country's on the line. We got to make it happen, so let's make it happen. So anyways, guys, thanks for watching this video. Like this video down below, comment down below, subscribe to the channel, hit the bell for notifications so you never miss another video. Follow me on social media. The links are all in the description down below, and I will see you guys in the next one. Red Eagle, out.